"There's not enough room for you, Mom." Those were the exact words that came out of my daughter Miriam's mouth when I asked about the seating on the plane for our trip to Disney World. The trip that I had paid for. The trip I had planned for months, for my 5 grandchildren. But it turned out there was space. For 31 people, uncles, friends, godparents, even people who barely knew the children. Everyone was going on my dream trip. Everyone except me. My name is Bernice. I'm 69 years old. And what I did after hearing those words changed my life forever. Because when they thought they had defeated me, that's when I became my strongest. The aroma of cinnamon and vanilla floated through my entire kitchen as I slowly stirred the batter for my grandchildren's favorite cookies. My hands, wrinkled but steady, worked with the same dedication as always. It was March, and I had already been saving every dollar for 6 months for the family trip we had planned so carefully. Disney World. The magic word that made the eyes of my 5 grandchildren sparkle every time I mentioned it. For months, I sold my homemade pies at the local farmer's market. I took on sewing jobs for the neighbors. I even sold some jewelry I no longer wore, all to make this trip unforgettable, because that's what grandmothers do, right? We sacrifice, we save. We work tirelessly to see our grandchildren happy. The house was filled with the smell of baking dough when I heard the familiar sound of Miriam's car parking in front of my door. My heart sped up, as it always did when I knew I was about to see them. I dried my hands on the embroidered apron they gave me for Mother's Day and ran to the window. There they were, my 5 rays of sunshine getting out of the car with their school backpacks, shouting, "Grandma Bernice," before even touching the doorknob. James, the oldest at 14, already almost as tall as me. The twins, Anna and Chloe, 11 years old, always fighting over who would hug me first. Little Leo, 8 years old, with his round glasses that made him look like a little scientist. And my baby, Sophie, at 6 years old, the one who always stayed the latest because she never wanted to leave my house. "It smells like chocolate chip cookies," Sophie yelled, running to the kitchen before even saying hello. The others followed her like a hungry stampede, filling my home with laughter and shouts of joy. It was the most beautiful sound in the world. Miriam came in behind them with that tired smile she always wore after work. "Hi, Mom," she said, giving me a quick kiss on the cheek. "Smells delicious, as always." Mark came in after her, his office suit wrinkled and that distracted expression of someone with 1,000 things on his mind. Sit down," I told them as I pulled the last tray of golden, perfect cookies from the oven. "I have cold milk, and I want you to tell me all about school." The children settled around my wooden table, the same table where I had raised Miriam, where we had celebrated birthdays, Christmases, and Sunday after Sunday of family meals. As I poured milk into the glasses they knew by heart, each with their favorite color, James looked at me with those bright eyes that reminded me so much of his grandfather. "Grandma, did you buy the tickets for Disney World yet?" he asked with the restrained excitement of a teenager pretending not to care, but dying of anticipation inside. My heart swelled with pride. "Of course, my love. I have everything ready, the flights, the hotel, the park passes. It will be the most beautiful trip of our lives." The twins started screaming with excitement. Leo spilled a little milk on the table, and little Sophie threw her arms around me with such force she nearly knocked me over. "We're going to meet Elsa," yelled Chloe. "And the Avengers," added Anna. "I want to ride the biggest roller coaster," said Leo, adjusting his glasses. It was pure magic listening to them dream out loud. Miriam and Mark exchanged a look that I couldn't interpret at that moment, something quick, almost imperceptible. But it left a strange feeling in my stomach, like when you know it's going to rain, even though the sky is clear. "Mom," Miriam said in a more serious voice than usual, "we need to talk about some details of the trip." The children kept eating cookies and talking excitedly about Disney World, while Miriam gestured for me to follow her into the living room. Mark stayed in the kitchen watching the little ones, but I could see his eyes following us with an expression I didn't like at all. "Mom, please sit down," Miriam said, pointing to the sofa where we had so often talked about her problems, her dreams, her fears. But this time, something was different. Her voice had a tone I didn't recognize, as if she were speaking to a stranger and not the woman who had raised her alone for 10 years. "What is it, honey? Is there a problem with the trip dates?" I asked as I settled into my favorite spot, the same one where I sat every night to knit while watching my shows. Because if you need to change something, we can. It's not that, Mom. Miriam ran her hands through her hair, that nervous gesture she'd had since she was a little girl when she had to tell me something difficult. It's about the trip itself. Mark and I have been thinking, and, well, we think it would be better if you didn't go. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. For a moment, I thought I had misheard, that my 69-year-old ears had played a cruel trick on me. I'm sorry, what did you say? That you don't go with us to Disney World. She repeated it more slowly, as if I were a child who didn't understand important things. Look, Mom, it's nothing personal. It's just that, well, there's not enough room for everyone. Not enough room? I repeated her words like an echo, feeling something break inside my chest. Miriam, I bought 7 plane tickets. I booked a family suite for 8 people. What space are you talking about? Oh, Mom, don't make this harder than it already island. She stood up from the sofa and began to pace, avoiding my eyes. The thing is, Mark has family who also wants to go. His brothers, his parents, some very close friends. And I also want to invite my friends, the children's godparents. It's going to be like a big family celebration. A big family celebration without me? The question slipped out of my mouth before I could stop it. Miriam, I paid for this whole trip. I worked extra for 6 months to afford it. And we'll pay you back, she interrupted me, with a tone that made me feel like an annoying creditor and not her mother. Mark has it all calculated. We'll return every single dollar. But understand, Mom, you've already lived your life. You traveled with Dad when you were young. Now it's our turn. Those words were like daggers stabbing into my heart. You've already lived your life. As if at 69 years old, my existence had come to an end. As if I didn't deserve to create new memories with my own grandchildren. Besides, Miriam continued, not noticing how her words were destroying me inside, it will be better for you to stay here, resting. The Disney parks are very tiring. You have to walk a lot, wait in long lines. At your age. At my age? I repeated, feeling the anger begin to boil in my chest. Miriam, I'm 69, not 99. I walk 5 kilometers every morning. I work on my feet for 8 hours at the market. I take care of your children every time you ask without ever complaining. Don't get me wrong, Mom. It's not that you're old or sick. It's just that, well, it will be easier without having to worry about you. Worry about me. As if I were a burden, an obstacle, something to be managed. The woman who had worked 3 jobs to give her everything she needed as a child, who had sold my wedding ring to pay for her college, who had mortgaged my house to help her when she married Mark. And what do the children think about this? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, though I felt it breaking. Because they were so excited to go with me. The children will understand. They're smart. Miriam finally sat across from me, but even then, she wouldn't look me in the eye. Besides, they'll be so busy having fun. They won't even notice you're not there. Every word was a slap in the face. The grandmother who cared for them when they were sick, who knew their favorite foods, who had taught them to ride a bike and tie their shoes. According to my own daughter, my absence would be invisible to them. And all those people you're going to invite? I asked with a calmness I didn't feel. Are they going to be able to handle the exhaustion of Disney World? Mom, don't be dramatic. It's different. They're young people, with energy. And besides, many of them are going to help with the trip's expenses. There it was, the naked, cruel truth. It wasn't about my age or my comfort. It was about money and image. They wanted a big, glamorous celebration, full of people, that would make them look successful and popular. A 69-year-old grandmother didn't fit into that perfect picture they wanted to show off on social media. How many people are going, exactly? I asked because I needed to know the full extent of their betrayal. I don't know, like 30, 31 people, more or less? She said it as if it were the most normal thing in the world. It's going to be incredible, Mom, like a big wedding or a sweet 16 party. But at Disney World, 31 people. On the trip that I had paid for. In the dream that I had built cookie by cookie, stitch by stitch, selling everything that had sentimental value to me. And out of those 31 people, I was the only one left over. The children kept laughing in the kitchen, oblivious to the conversation that was shattering my world. Their innocent voices contrasted brutally with the coldness of their mother, my daughter, the little girl I had cared for with so much love, who now treated me as if I were a nuisance. "Is it decided then?" I finally asked, though I already knew the answer. "Yes, Mom. We've already bought the tickets for everyone. It's all organized." Miriam finally looked at me, but in her eyes, I saw no regret, no pain, only relief, as if she had rid herself of an annoying problem. I sat there on my sofa, in my own house, feeling more alone than I ever had in my 69 years of life. I remained silent for several minutes, processing what I had just heard. 31 people were going to Disney World on the trip I had paid for, planned, and dreamed of for months, all of them except me. The irony was so cruel it was almost laughable, if not for the feeling that my heart had been ripped from my chest. "Mom? Are you okay?" Miriam's voice sounded distant, as if from another world. A world where mothers no longer mattered once they had fulfilled their function of raising and sacrificing. "I'm perfect, my love," I replied with a smile that hurt down to my bones. "Perfectly fine." We went back to the kitchen, where the children were still planning their magical adventure. James had his phone out and was showing his siblings videos of the most exciting roller coasters. The twins were arguing about which princess was the prettiest. Leo had found some paper and a pencil and was drawing his version of Mickey Mouse, and little Sophie looked at me with those huge, pure eyes full of love. "Grandma, are you going to ride the space roller coaster too?" she asked, as she climbed onto my lap, as she had done 1,000 times. I felt my throat tighten. "Of course, my sweetie," I lied, stroking her silky hair. "Grandma will ride every single ride you want." Mark came over and put a hand on my shoulder, with that fake smile he used when he needed something from me. "Bernice, I hope you understand that this is for the best. You can rest here, worry-free, and we'll take the kids to have the time of their lives." "Of course I understand, Mark," I answered, maintaining that smile that was killing me inside. "You're absolutely right. It's for the best." For the next hour, I pretended to be excited about their trip while the children told me everything they wanted to do at Disney World. Every word was a stab, but I kept smiling, nodding, promising I would buy them whatever souvenirs they wanted, because that's what they expected of me, to continue being the generous, understanding grandmother I had always been. When they finally left, with the children shouting, "We love you, Grandma," from the car windows, I closed the door and leaned against it. The silence of my house enveloped me like a cold, heavy blanket. I walked to the kitchen, where dirty dishes and cookie crumbs were the only evidence that, just minutes ago, my home had been full of life and laughter. I began to wash the glasses mechanically, each movement automatic as my mind processed what had just happened. My own daughter had kicked me off the most important trip of my life. Not for lack of money, not for health problems, not for any valid reason. Simply because I didn't fit the image she wanted to project. Because I had already lived my life. And now it was her turn. That night I couldn't sleep. I tossed and turned, thinking of all the times I had put Miriam and her children before myself. When I sold my car to help her with the down payment on her house. When I worked double shifts at the market to pay for her wedding. When I stayed up all night with her sick children while she and Mark went out to parties. I remembered the time I gave up a trip to Europe with my sister Rose because Miriam needed me to watch the kids during her vacation with Mark. "Some other time, Mom," she had said, "when you're younger." The irony of those words now burned like acid. The following days were a silent hell. Miriam would call occasionally to tell me about the trip preparations, as if we were friends talking about someone else's vacation. She told me about the suitcases she'd bought, the itineraries she'd planned, the children's excitement. "By the way, Mom," she said during one of those calls, "could you watch the house while we're gone? You know, water the plants, get the mail, that sort of thing." They wanted me to be their free housekeeper while they enjoyed the trip I had paid for. The humiliation was complete. A week before the trip, Miriam came to my house with a radiant smile and an energy I hadn't seen in years. "Mom, you have to see this," she said, pulling out her phone. "Mark created a WhatsApp group for everyone going on the trip. Look how many people." She showed me the screen where I could see the names of the 31 people going on my trip to Disney World. I recognized a few Mark's brothers, his parents, some of Miriam's friends from work, but there were many names I didn't even know, people I didn't even know existed until that week. "See? It's going to be like a big family party," Miriam said with a joy that contrasted brutally with the pain I was feeling. "The kids will have so many aunts and uncles looking after them, they won't even miss you." That phrase was the last straw. "They won't even miss you," said so naturally, as if it were a benefit that my own grandchildren wouldn't notice my absence. As if the years I had spent being their confidant, their safe harbor, their second mother, meant nothing. "That's wonderful, honey," I managed to say in a voice I didn't recognize as my own. "I'm so relieved to know they'll be in such good company." That night, after Miriam left, chattering excitedly about dinner reservations and the shows they would see, I sat in my kitchen with a cup of tea I had no desire to drink. The house was completely silent, but my mind was a hurricane of emotions. It was then that I made a decision that would change everything. I stood up, walked to my bedroom, and pulled a suitcase out of the closet that I hadn't used since my honeymoon with my late husband. It was time to stop being the invisible grandmother. It was time to remind them who Bernice really was. The suitcase looked small and sad on my bed, covered in a thin layer of dust that spoke of years of disuse. I opened it slowly, and the smell of mothballs immediately transported me to better times, when my husband and I dreamed of traveling the world together, plans that life never allowed us to fulfill. But things were different now. Now, I didn't have to ask anyone for permission. I picked up my phone and dialed a number I hadn't called in months. On the third ring, a warm, familiar voice answered. "Bernice? What a wonderful surprise. How are you, sis?" "Hello, Rose," I replied, feeling my voice break just from hearing someone who was genuinely happy to hear from me. I need to talk to you. Can I come over?" "Of course. Come whenever you want. Is everything all right? You sound strange." "I'll explain when I get there," I managed to say before hanging up. Rose lived only a 20-minute bus ride away, but the journey felt eternal. I carried my small suitcase and a folder with some important documents. I didn't know exactly what I was doing. I just knew I couldn't stay in that house waiting for them to come back from their trip and tell me how wonderful it had been without me. My older sister greeted me at the door with the smile that had always brought me peace since we were little girls. At 72, Rose was still the most elegant woman I knew, with her perfectly coiffed silver hair and those blue eyes that radiated wisdom. "Bernice, what's wrong?" "You look terrible," she said as she helped me with the suitcase. "And what's with the suitcase? Are you going on a trip?" I sat in her cozy living room, surrounded by photographs of our parents, our children when they were small, of happy moments that seemed to belong to another life. And then, the dam holding back my emotions for weeks finally broke. I told her everything, every humiliating detail, every hurtful word, every moment I had felt invisible in my own family. Rose listened in silence, but I could see her eyes fill with angry tears as my story unfolded. "That ungrateful girl," she muttered when I finished, "after everything you've done for her. I don't know what to do, Rose. I feel so empty, as if I don't matter to anyone anymore." My sister stood up and walked over to an old desk in the corner of the living room. She pulled out a manila folder I recognized immediately. It was the same folder where we kept all the important family documents. "Bernice," she said, sitting back down across from me, "there's something you need to know. Something I should have told you a long time ago, but I didn't want to worry you while you were grieving your husband." "What are you talking about? Do you remember the life insurance policy your husband had? The one we thought was lost because the money never came?" My heart sped up. Yes, of course, I remember. We waited for months, and nothing. We finally assumed there was a problem with the paperwork. "It wasn't lost, Bernice. It was here, with me." Rose opened the folder and took out a large envelope I had never seen before. "Your husband asked me to be the secondary beneficiary and to give you the money when you were ready to make important decisions without Miriam's influence." "What?" The words came out of my mouth in a whisper. "He knew what Miriam was like, sis. He knew her better than you thought. He told me, if something happens to me, don't give Bernice the money right away. Wait until she really needs it, until she has to choose between her dignity and her family. That's when you'll know it's the right time." My hands trembled as I took the envelope. Inside were official documents, seals, signatures, and a check for an amount that took my breath away. It was enough money to live comfortably for years, to travel, to do everything I had ever wanted to do. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked, tears rolling down my cheeks. "Because I knew you would have spent it all on Miriam and her kids. You would have used it to buy them a bigger house, to pay for private schools, to continue being the perfect mother who sacrifices for everyone." Rose took my hands gently. "Your husband wanted you to have a life of your own, Bernice. He wanted you to be happy beyond being a mother and a grandmother." I stared at the check as if it were a magical object. With that amount, I could do anything. Go on a trip, buy my own place, even get revenge for the humiliation I had just suffered. "Do you know what day they leave for their trip?" Rose asked me as if she had read my mind. "Tomorrow morning." "Perfect." My sister smiled with a mischievousness I hadn't seen since we were teenagers planning pranks. "Then we have work to do." That night, I slept at my sister's house for the first time in decades. It was the best night's sleep I'd had in months. There were no nightmares about suitcases I couldn't pack or planes I was missing. There was no anguish thinking about everything I would miss. For the first time in years, I slept with the peace of knowing I had options. The next morning, while Miriam and her group of 31 people were heading to the airport for the trip I had paid for, I was at the bank depositing the biggest check of my life. The teller looked at me curiously when she saw the amount, but didn't ask any questions. "Would you like to make any immediate transfers or payments?" she asked. "Yes," I replied with a smile that came from my soul. "I want to cancel all the scheduled payments for the family trip to Disney World, and I want to make a reservation for 2 people to the Maldives." The teller blinked in surprise. "The Maldives, ma'am?" "The Maldives," I confirmed. "My sister and I are going on vacation." When I left the bank, I took out my phone and dialed the number of the travel agency I had used to plan the Disney World trip. It was time to plan my own trip, my own adventure. My new life was about to begin. The phone rang 3 times before Angela, my travel agent, answered in her usual professional voice. "Mrs. Bernice, how are you? Is there a problem with your Disney World reservation? I saw that you canceled all the payments this morning." "There's no problem at all, Angela," I replied, feeling a strange sense of power coursing through my veins. "I've had a change of plans. I want to make a completely new reservation." "Of course. For when and where?" "For tomorrow, if possible. My sister and I want to go to the Maldives for 2 weeks. First class, the best resort you have available. Money is no object." There was a silence on the other end of the line. Angela probably didn't expect a 69-year-old woman to request a luxury trip to the Maldives with less than 24 hours' notice. "Let me check the available options," she said, finally. "May I ask if there's a special reason for the urgency?" "Yes," I replied, looking up at the clear blue sky of that beautiful morning. "I just remembered that I'm still alive." 2 hours later, Rose and I were at the mall buying beachwear, swimsuits, elegant hats, and everything we would need for our impromptu trip to paradise. My sister was more excited than a teenager. "I can't believe we're doing this," she said as she tried on a turquoise silk dress. "Do you know how many years I've dreamed of a trip like this?" "Too many," I answered, admiring my own reflection in the mirror. The white dress I had chosen made me look years younger. But we're not just dreaming anymore. From now on, we're living. We bought new suitcases, expensive beauty products I had never allowed myself, and even a new phone with a better camera to capture every moment of our adventure. It was as if after years of denying myself everything, I had finally given myself permission to love myself. That afternoon, while I was packing at Rose's house, my phone started ringing insistently. It was Miriam. I hesitated for a moment before answering. "Mom, where are you? We went to your house to get the keys, and you weren't there. The neighbors said they saw you leave with a suitcase yesterday." "I'm at your Aunt Rose's house," I replied with a calm that surprised me. "Why? Did something happen?" "We're at the airport. Our flight leaves in 2 hours." I could hear the background noise of the airport, the children's voices asking for me, the murmur of those 31 people who had taken my place on my dream trip. "Nothing serious happened, honey. I just decided to take a little vacation with my sister." "A vacation? You." "But, Mom, we need you to watch the house while we're gone. We already agreed on that." There it was again. The automatic expectation that I would be available to serve them, no matter how they had treated me, as if I were an object to be stored in a closet until needed. You'll have to find another solution, Miriam. I have a right to enjoy my life too. Another solution? Mom, I don't understand. Where are you going? For how long? To the Maldives, I replied, savoring every syllable. For 2 weeks. The silence on the other end was so profound that for a moment I thought the call had been disconnected. The Maldives? Miriam's voice was incredulous. Mom, where did you get the money for a trip like that? From the same place I got the money to pay for your trip to Disney World, I answered, feeling the anger I had been suppressing finally find its voice. From my work, from my savings, from my life. But Mom, that's ridiculous. The Maldives are incredibly expensive. That money would be better invested in. In what, Miriam? In paying for more family trips from which you exclude me? In buying you more things you don't need while I stay home like an unpaid employee? Don't exaggerate. We've never treated you like an employee. Haven't you? The laugh that escaped my throat was as bitter as cold coffee. Then explain to me why 31 people can go on the trip I paid for, but for me, there isn't enough room. I could hear Miriam whispering something to Mark, probably asking him to talk to his crazy mother-in-law who had suddenly become rebellious. Mom, you're being very dramatic, she finally said. When we get back, we'll talk calmly about all this. But please, be reasonable. Cancel that ridiculous trip and go watch the house like we agreed. No. The word came out of my mouth with a firmness I hadn't felt in decades. Simple, direct, final. What do you mean, no? No, Miriam. I am not canceling my trip. I am not watching your house. I am not going to continue being the convenient grandmother who is only available when you need her. But the children, what will they think when they find out their grandmother went on a trip instead of waiting for them at home? The children will think that their grandmother has a right to be happy too, I replied, feeling tears of liberation stream down my cheeks. And maybe, someday, when they're adults, they will understand that grandmothers are people with dreams and desires too. Mom, this is insane. When we get back, we are going to have a serious conversation about your behavior. Yes, we will, I agreed. But it's going to be very different from the conversation you're expecting. I hung up the phone before she could respond. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. It was the first time in my life I had said no to Miriam. The first time I had put my needs before hers. Rose hugged me tightly. I am so proud of you, she whispered in my ear. Your husband would be proud too. That night, as I finished packing my new suitcase filled with new clothes for my new life, I couldn't help but smile. In less than 24 hours, I would be on a plane to paradise. Meanwhile, they would be starting to realize that the invisible grandmother had disappeared. And the best part was, I was just getting started. The flight to the Maldives was the most luxurious experience of my life. Rose and I flew first class, with seats that turned into beds, French champagne, and service that made me feel like a queen. Every time a flight attendant asked if I needed anything, I remembered Miriam's words. You've already lived your life. It was clear my life was just beginning. The resort was more beautiful than I had seen in the pictures. A bungalow over the crystal-clear water, white sand beaches that seemed otherworldly, and service so attentive that I felt guilty for the first few days for so much kindness. Enjoy it, sis, Rose would say as we got massages on the beach. You've earned it after 69 years of taking care of everyone but yourself. The first few days were pure relaxation. We slept in late, had breakfast overlooking the sea, and read books that had been waiting on my nightstand for years. For the first time in decades, my days didn't revolve around the needs of others. There were no grandchildren to feed, no house to clean, no family dramas to solve. It was on the 4th day that my phone started buzzing insistently. I had been avoiding checking my messages, but the persistence was such that I finally decided to see what was happening. I had 43 missed calls from Miriam. The first voicemail sounded annoyed. Mom, call me immediately. We need to talk about this Maldives ridiculousness. The second already sounded worried. Mom, please answer. The kids are asking about you, and I don't know what to tell them. By the 10th message, her voice had changed completely. Mom, please, we need your help. Everything is turning into a disaster here. I decided to read the WhatsApp messages. The first day had been photos of the group at Disney World, forced smiles and perfect poses for social media. But as the days went on, the tone changed dramatically. The kids are constantly asking for you. Anna got sick and only wants her grandma to take care of her. Leo lost his glasses and is crying because he says you always find them. Sophie won't eat anything. She says the food doesn't taste the same without her grandma's cookies. James got into a fight with one of Mark's guests because he said you should be here, but the message that hit me the hardest was one Miriam had sent that morning. Mom, this is a nightmare. The kids are inconsolable. They spend half their time crying for you. I don't understand why they need you so much. Please come back. I don't understand why they need you so much. After telling me they wouldn't even notice my absence, it now turned out that my absence was ruining their perfect trip. Rose read the messages over my shoulder as we sipped cocktails in our bungalow. Are you going to answer her? She asked. Not yet, I replied, taking a sip of my piña colada. Let them feel what it's like to be invisible. But that afternoon, my phone rang again. This time, it wasn't Miriam. It was James, my oldest grandson. Grandma? His voice was broken, as if he had been crying. Hello, my love. I answered immediately, because no matter how hurt I was with his mother, he was not to blame. Grandma, why didn't you come with us? Everyone is saying you didn't want to come, but I know that's not true. You always want to be with us. My heart broke hearing him. James, my sweetie. The twins cry every night because they say Disney World isn't fun without you, and Leo lost his glasses, and Mom got really mad because she can't find them. You always know where lost things are. My love, listen to me carefully, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Grandma is fine. She's on a trip, seeing beautiful places, and you are all going to be fine too. But why didn't you come? Mom says you preferred to go alone, but that doesn't sound like you. I didn't know what to say. I couldn't tell a 14-year-old boy that his mother had excluded me from the trip I had paid for myself. I couldn't explain that they had treated me like I was a burden. Sometimes adults make difficult decisions, James, but I want you to know that I love you all so much and that when you get back, we'll talk about everything. Do you promise that when we get back, everything will be like it was before? That question shattered me because I knew the answer was no. Nothing would be like before. I wouldn't be like before. I promise that when you get back, things will be better, I said. And for the first time in days, I felt like I was telling the truth. After hanging up, I watched the sunset from my bungalow. The colors of the sky reflected on the water like a perfect painting. It was beautiful, but I also felt a pang of sadness for my grandchildren. Do you regret it? Rose asked, having heard the whole conversation. No, I answered without hesitation. It hurts that the children are suffering, but I don't regret it. For the first time in my life, I'm doing something for me. That night, as we dined in the resort's most elegant restaurant, I made a decision. The next day, I would send them all a message. Not to apologize, but to explain that Grandma Bernice had woken up, and when I returned from this trip, there were going to be new rules. Those who truly loved me would have to learn to respect me, and those who only needed me as a free employee would have to find another solution. Because the woman who had paid for a trip only to be excluded from it had died somewhere between the airport and the Maldives. The one coming back was completely different. The message I sent from the Maldives was simple but direct. I am perfectly fine, enjoying a well-deserved vacation. I return the same day you get back from Disney World. When we see each other, we are going to establish new rules for how this family operates. I love you, but I will no longer allow you to treat me as if I am invisible. Miriam's response arrived in less than 5 minutes. Mom, you are being ridiculous. Come back immediately. The children need you, and so do we. No, I replied. The following days in the Maldives were transformative. Rose and I went snorkeling, took yoga classes on the beach, and at night we talked about the lives we had lived and the ones we wanted to live. For the first time in years, I felt like Bernice, not Miriam's mom or the kids' grandma. Do you know what your husband told me before he died? Rose told me one night as we watched the stars from our bungalow. He said, "Take care of Bernice when I'm gone. Don't let her forget that she is an extraordinary woman who deserves to be happy." You never told me that, I murmured, feeling my eyes well up with tears. Because I knew you weren't ready to hear it. But you are now. The flight back was bittersweet. I knew the bubble of tranquility I had lived in for 2 weeks was about to burst. But I also knew I was no longer the same woman who had gotten on that plane 2 weeks ago. I arrived at my house the same day they returned from Disney World. I got there 2 hours early and used that time to change the locks. If they wanted to enter my house, they would have to knock on the door like polite visitors. I didn't have to wait long. At 6 o'clock in the evening, I heard Miriam's car park outside. Then, the sound of keys failing to work in the lock. Then, knocking on the door. "Mom, why aren't the keys working?" Miriam yelled from outside. I took a deep breath, looked at myself in the entryway mirror, and opened the door. The 5 children threw themselves on me immediately, hugging me as if I had been lost for years. "Grandma, we missed you so much," they all shouted at once. James hugged me tighter than ever. The twins kissed my cheeks. Leo showed me his new glasses, which he said weren't as good as the ones I would have bought him, and little Sophie clung to my neck, refusing to let go. Miriam and Mark came in behind them, with long faces and dark circles under their eyes that spoke of 2 very difficult weeks. "Mom, why did you change the locks?" Miriam asked reproachfully. "Because this is my house," I replied with a calm that surprised even me. "And from now on, people enter when I invite them." "What's gotten into you? Why are you acting so strangely?" Mark looked particularly annoyed. "Your behavior has been very immature, Bernice." "Immature?" I repeated the word, savoring it. Interesting choice of words, coming from someone who invited 31 people on the trip I paid for, but didn't have room for me. The children looked at us, confused, not understanding the tension in the air. "Grandma," Sophie said, tugging on my dress, "why didn't you go with us to Disney World? I saved all my favorite candies for you." I knelt to her level. "My love, sometimes adults make decisions that hurt other people. Your mommy decided that I couldn't go on the trip that Grandma had planned and paid for." "Mom, don't bring the kids into this," Miriam protested. "They're already in it, Miriam. They're the ones who suffered the consequences of your decision." I stood up and looked her directly in the eyes. "According to you, they wouldn't even notice my absence. How did that work out for you?" The silence that followed was deafening. Miriam avoided my gaze, and Mark started pacing nervously in my living room. "Look, Mom," Miriam finally said. "Maybe we were wrong. Maybe we should have included you in the trip. But it's over now. We need things to go back to normal." "Normal?" I laughed without humor. "You mean the normal where I keep working for you for free while you treat me like I'm invisible? Don't exaggerate." "Am I exaggerating?" I took out my phone and began to read her own messages. "The kids are constantly asking for you. Anna got sick and only wants her grandma to take care of her. Leo lost his glasses and is crying because he says you always find them." I looked up. "Does any of this sound familiar?" Miriam blushed completely. "Those were difficult moments." "No, Miriam. Those were the moments you realized that the invisible grandmother was actually indispensable." Mark decided to intervene with his usual condescending tone. "Bernice, we understand you felt excluded, but—" "No." I cut him off with a firmness that came from my soul. "Mark, you don't understand anything. And don't you ever call me by my first name again, as if we were friends? To you, I am Mrs. Bernice." The children watched the scene with wide eyes. They had never seen their grandmother speak to adults like that. "Grandma," James said in a worried voice, "don't you love us anymore?" "I love you more than life itself," I answered him immediately. "But that doesn't mean I'm going to keep letting your parents disrespect me." I went to the kitchen and came back with a chair, which I placed in the center of the living room. I sat down with the dignity of a queen about to deliver a verdict. "These are the new rules," I announced. "Rule number 1, this is my house. No one enters without an invitation. Rule number 2, my time has value. If you want me to watch the children, you will pay me like any professional babysitter. Rule number 3, my opinions will be heard and respected in all family decisions that affect me." "This is ridiculous," Mark shouted. "You can't treat us like strangers." "Rule number 4, I continued, ignoring him completely. "I will never again tolerate being excluded from family events that I have financed." Mom, please, Miriam begged, tears in her eyes. We just want everything to go back to the way it was. The way it was before? I replied, standing up. The way it was when I had no voice and no vote, when I worked for you for free and settled for whatever crumbs of affection you gave me? And if we don't accept your rules? Mark asked defiantly. I smiled for the first time in the whole conversation. Then you're going to have to find another grandmother. Mark's face transformed completely when he heard my words. He went from arrogance to panic in a matter of seconds. Another grandmother? Bernice, you can't be serious. The children love you. They need you. The children will always have me, I replied with a calm that contrasted with his desperation. But on my terms, not yours. Miriam started to cry, but they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of frustration, like when she was a little girl and didn't get what she wanted. This is emotional blackmail, she yelled. You can't use the children to manipulate us. Emotional blackmail? I repeated, incredulous. Miriam, who was it that told me the children wouldn't even notice I was gone? Who excluded me from the most important trip of my life? Who has treated me like a housekeeper for years? The children started to get nervous watching the adults argue. James took his younger siblings and led them to the sofa, protecting them like the mature teenager he had been forced to become in such a dysfunctional family. Grandma, he said in a trembling voice, are you not going to be our grandma anymore? I will always be your grandma, my love. But your mom and dad are going to have to learn to treat me with respect. Mark started pacing back and forth like a caged animal. This is insane. We can't accept these ridiculous demands. Pay you to watch your own grandchildren? Ask for permission to enter your house? They are my grandchildren, but you are not my employers, I replied firmly. And this is my house, not a free daycare center. But we're family, Miriam yelled. Exactly. We are family, which means you owe me respect, consideration, and love. Not free service and constant humiliation. It was then that Mark played his dirtiest card. Look, Bernice, I think you're getting confused because of your age. Maybe you should talk to a doctor about these episodes. The silence that followed was glacial. Even the children fell quiet, sensing that something very serious had just happened. Episodes? I asked in a dangerously low voice. Yes, this erratic behavior, the impulsive decisions, the expensive and unnecessary trip. Maybe you need professional help. It was the most blatant gaslighting I had ever experienced, trying to make me believe that my normal reaction to years of emotional abuse was a symptom of dementia. I took out my phone and dialed a number I had kept for years but had never used. What are you doing? Miriam asked, alarmed. Calling my lawyer, I replied as I waited for them to answer. Your lawyer? Mom, don't be dramatic. Mr. Adler? This is Bernice, Rose's sister. Yes, I need to see you urgently. Can you come to my house now? Perfect, I'll be waiting. I hung up and went to the desk where I kept all my important documents. I took out a folder I had been preparing since I returned from the Maldives. What is that? Mark asked nervously. Evidence, I replied, opening the folder. Receipts for all the payments I've made for you over the last 5 years. Invoices from the Disney World trip I canceled. Screenshots of all the messages where you humiliated and excluded me. You can't be recording our conversations, Miriam protested. I don't record them. I save them. Every derogatory message. Every time you've treated me like an employee. Every occasion you have disrespected me. I pulled out a spreadsheet I had meticulously prepared. Did you know that in the last 5 years, I have spent over $50,000 on you? Trips, gifts, childcare, loans you never paid back. Mark came closer to see the papers and turned pale. This island. Evidence of financial and emotional elder abuse? I finished the sentence for him. Yes, that's exactly what it island. The doorbell rang, and I went to open it. Mr. Adler was a man in his 60s, elegant, and with the presence that only successful lawyers have. I had met him at Rose's family gatherings, but we had never talked business. Bernice, he greeted me with a warm smile. Rose told me a little about your situation. Can we talk? Of course. In fact, I need you to meet my family. When Mr. Adler entered the living room and saw the scene, the children huddled on the sofa, Miriam crying, Mark pacing nervously, his expression immediately shifted to professional mode. "Good evening." He greeted them politely before turning to me. "Could you explain the situation?" For the next 20 minutes, I explained everything to Mr. Adler, while Miriam and Mark listened in growing silence. I showed him the documents, the receipts, the messages. I told him about the Disney World trip, about years of emotional abuse disguised as family love. "I understand," Mr. Adler said after reviewing everything. "Mrs. Bernice, you have a very strong case for financial and emotional abuse by family members. This is classified as domestic violence against the elderly." "Domestic violence?" Mark yelled. "This is ridiculous," Mr. Adler replied in a cold voice. "Excluding an elderly person from events she herself financed, exploiting her financially and emotionally, and then questioning her mental sanity when she defends herself, are all recognized forms of domestic violence." "What are my options?" I asked. "Many. You can sue for financial restitution, you can request a protective order, you can even press criminal charges." Mr. Adler looked at Miriam and Mark sternly. "Or you can reach a civilized agreement that respects her rights and her dignity." We can reach an agreement," Miriam stammered. "Perfect," Mr. Adler smiled. "Then we will draft a family contract that clearly establishes the terms of your future relationship." Mark slumped into a chair, finally understanding that the submissive grandmother they could manipulate was gone forever. 6 months after that afternoon that changed my life forever, I am sitting on the terrace of my new oceanfront condo, writing in the journal I started during my trip to the Maldives. The sun is setting, and the sky is painted with colors I never knew how to appreciate before because I was always too busy taking care of others to take care of myself. The contract Mr. Adler drafted turned out to be more effective than any family argument. Miriam and Mark had no choice but to accept my terms when they realized the alternative was facing legal charges and the public scandal of mistreating an elderly person. Now, when I watch my grandchildren, they pay me $50 an hour, just like any professional babysitter. When they want me to attend family events, they consult me on the dates in advance and respect my answer, whether it's yes or no. And most importantly, when they plan family trips, I am the first one invited, not the last one excluded. But the biggest change wasn't in them, it was in me. With the money from my husband's inheritance, I bought this small but beautiful condo with an ocean view. I no longer live to please others. I live to be happy. I take painting classes on Tuesdays, yoga on Thursdays, and weekends are exclusively for doing whatever I please. Rose and I have become inseparable. We travel every 2 months to places we always dreamed of seeing but never dared to visit. Next month, we're going to Japan to see the cherry blossoms. At 72, my sister is living the best time of her life, and I'm right there with her on that adventure. The children adapted better than I expected to the new Grandma Bernice. James, now 15, told me recently, "Grandma, I like this version of you better. You always seemed tired and sad before. Now your eyes sparkle." The twins brag to their friends that their grandma is the coolest because she travels the world and has incredible stories to tell. Leo comes to my condo every Wednesday after school so I can teach him how to bake the cookies he loves so much. And little Sophie, now 7, tells me that when she grows up, she wants to be just like me, an adventurous grandmother who isn't afraid of anything. It took Miriam 3 months to truly apologize, not those empty apologies she used to give to get out of trouble, but a genuine apology with real tears. "Mom," she told me, "I didn't realize how badly I was treating you until I lost you. When you were always available, I just thought that was normal. I never considered that you had dreams and needs too." Mark took longer, but eventually, he had to acknowledge that his behavior had been unacceptable. The turning point was when his own mother, upon hearing what had happened, scolded him severely and told him that if he ever treated an elderly person in her family like that, she would sue him herself. But the most important conversation I had was with my grandchildren on my 70th birthday. I gathered them on my new terrace and told them my whole story. I explained that sometimes families forget that grandmothers are people too, with feelings, dreams, and a right to be respected. "Why didn't you tell us you were sad before?" Anna asked me with tears in her eyes. "Because I thought my job was to make you all happy, no matter how I felt. But I learned that I can't give true love if I don't love myself first. "And are you happy now?" little Sophie asked. "Happier than I've been in years, my love." The story spread like wildfire among my friends my age. It turns out that many grandmothers live in similar situations. Children who exploit them emotionally, families that take them for granted, grandchildren who love them but whose parents treat them like unpaid employees. I started giving talks at community centers for seniors. My favorite topic is, it's never too late to reclaim your dignity. I've met hundreds of women who have lived lives similar to mine, giving everything for their families and receiving crumbs of respect in return. A month ago, a 75-year-old woman sought me out after one of my talks. She told me her children had put her in a nursing home to take her house, but after listening to me, she had decided to hire a lawyer. Last week, she wrote to tell me she got her house back, and now her children visit her with respect, not pity. Another woman my age wrote to me from Spain. She had seen a video of my story on social media that James had uploaded without my permission, but which I'm grateful he did. She told me she was in a similar situation with her daughter and that my story had given her the courage to stand up for herself. It's incredible how a personal story can become an inspiration for so many other women. I never thought my pain could be transformed into hope for other invisible grandmothers. Today, as I write this in my journal, I can hear the ocean waves and feel the salty breeze on my face. In an hour, my grandchildren are coming to visit for dinner. They are coming because they want to, not because their mother is forcing them. They are coming to visit me in my home, where I set the rules and where they treat me with the respect I deserve. The grandmother who paid for a trip only to be excluded from it no longer exists. In her place is a 70-year-old woman who learned that self-love is not selfishness, it's survival, that setting boundaries is not cruelty, it's a necessity, and that it is never, ever too late to claim your place in the world. My name is Bernice. I am 70 years old, and I have just begun to live.